Guys, it is Marcus here with Terry, and today we are talking about how to stop being a victim with alcoholism. And I think I need to start over here. I think that's going to be a little bit better. You'll have to excuse me. I was doing a video for my other business yesterday, and I threw everything around the office. It was a great, entertaining video. So we are here today. Hopefully everyone is doing okay. I'll just turn this screen over so that I can see what everyone's saying. And how you doing, Terry?
I'm doing well. How about
Good.
yourself?
I'm doing okay. Been real busy and lack of sleep. It's always fun to have teenage kids because you always get the teenage drama in that. So, we try. But definitely lack of sleep, which, as you know, sometimes can affect us um, with our life. So, let's get the show on the road. So, today, what we're doing is we're talking about the victim mentality in alcoholism. Now, for me, I remember when I first realized I had a drinking problem, I thought the whole world was against me. I thought that everything was against me. I thought that life was against me. I thought the government was against me. I thought business was against me. I thought everything was against me. And I always thought to myself, how much can this poor little Marcus take? And I was like, okay, everything's against me. Everything is bad. Everything's coming down. What am I going to do? And I thought to myself these things, and I would spend probably 75, 80% of the day thinking the oh, woe is me thought. And I know that they always have that joke in alcoholism or alcohol meetings where they say, hey, pour me, pour me, pour me another drink.
Yep.
Because that's kind of how it goes, right? You think of these things and you're like, well, poor me. Everything's against me. My wife's against me. My kids are against me. My family's against me. And it was really, really consuming to my life. And that's all I thought about. Hey, everything's against me, and nothing could happen without it being turned or spun into something bad or something against me, right? Can you relate to that?
Oh, absolutely. I was a complete victim when I was drinking, especially in the later years. Absolutely. I was a heavy drinker, and alcohol absolutely cured that until the end when it didn't cure anything anymore.
Mhm. That's interesting because for me, alcohol was like fuel to the flame. When I was a victim without drinking or without my normal amount, um, I was a little bit less. I was more optimistic. I was more steady. I was more okay. Let's do this. Let's take charge. And as soon as I had the first couple drinks, it just warped my mind enough to be like, "Hey, you are a victim. Everything's against you. You can't fix it. You have no control." And it just kind of went downhill from there. And if you guys are tuning in, tell us what you think about the victim mindset because I look at this and I'm like, we look at these things in life, and I look at the Serenity Prayer, which is kind of interesting. It was actually taken from Stoic philosophy, if you really study it. And the Stoics were very big, and they believed, hey, you know what? There's these things in life that you can change. There's things that you can't change. And how do we look at them? Because here we are running our life, and you're like, okay, well, something happens. Maybe you get sick, or maybe spouse leaves you, or maybe your job ends or whatever it is, right? Or you get fired or passed up for a promotion, or maybe you find out that you didn't do your taxes right and you owe more or something like that. And we look at these things in life, and oftentimes with the Stoic philosophy, they're like, okay, what are the things I can change? Okay, well, taxes, yeah, I can change that. Make a plan to pay them, call them up, done, right? Not that big a deal. You just go do it. Spouse leaves me, well, you can't really control or change that. It's like, okay, well, they left. Maybe you can try to get them back, but you know, maybe not. And you look at these things and you say, what can I control? What can I change? And as alcoholics, I realized that in my alcoholism, someone called me out on it. They were like, okay, you're a control freak. And for me, I never really looked at that because I was like, well, I'm not a control freak. I'm just me, right? And I'm kind of a nice guy. And those other people that are mean are control freaks. And I didn't realize that you could be a passive aggressive, manipulative control freak. I didn't think that was a thing. I thought, here's meek little humble Marcus who just gets dumped on all the time, and everyone's trying to control him, and woe is me. Nothing works to my favor, and I really looked at that, and I was like, well, you know what? I am controlling my world. I'm controlling my outcome, but I'm not doing it the way that I want to. I'm not taking charge of the things I can take charge of. Instead, I'm dwelling on everything as if it's life happening to me. And oftentimes we look at life as life happening to us, right? That happened to me. That person left me. And we don't think of the other side of the coin of, well, hey, you know what? That person also has a part in it. That person also had something, right? These things are happening to other people as well. Life isn't just happening to you, it's happening for everyone, right? It's happening for everyone. And it's interesting because I was first introduced to this way of thinking years ago when I was questioning like spiritual stuff and religious stuff. And someone had said, well, what do you think God's thought life is? Right? What do you think it's like to have, if you believe in a God, and it's totally up to you whether you do or not, but what do you think his thought life would be like? Right? He's got 8 billion people on this planet. We don't know if he has other planets with like aliens or anything. We have no idea. But on this planet alone, he has 8 billion people. And we look at that and we're like, well, do you think he's sitting there thinking about you? Like, do you think he's like, oh, well, I'm going to give you this bad thing or I'm going to give you that or whatever? Or do you think he's looking at it corporatively as a whole, saying, well, these things happen, right? These things just happen. This is life going on, and you just happen to be in it. So oftentimes, I think we lost our camera here. Hold on one second. I think I might have to put a card in this one. Well, everyone knows I use a Panasonic camera now.
Well, there you go. Now we know what to buy if we're going to do webinars,
There
right?
you go, Panasonic 4K camera. There we go. We're back online. But that's the idea, right? And we look at that, and welcome, Kira. Thanks for joining us. We will have the replay. We love YouTube because they actually put the replay up instantly after we're done, which is cool. So if you just check our channel, it'll be up there, and you'll be able to watch it. But yeah, back to that with the thought life of God, we think about it, and oftentimes we view life as what's happening to us. And it's interesting because in, I think it would be psychology or philosophy or something, there's this term, and I might say it wrong, and it's called a solipse or solipsism or something like that. And a solipse person who believes in that thing, go Google it, you'll find the right word, is someone who believes that they are the only person alive and everything is a figment of their imagination, right? And it's kind of interesting because in a way, are we not all that way? In a way, do we not think that everything is here for our own narcissistic gain in some way? Like, hey, this is happening to me. I'm going to get that. And it's a product of culture. It's a product of our upbringing. It's a product of a lot of things because we look at it and we're going through life and it's like, this happened to me. I can't believe that happened to me. Why? There's some kid starving in a different country, and to my problems are nothing compared to that. Nothing. I have, like, my right to complain about anything goes out the window because it's like, okay, that dude needs more of God than I need, right? He needs more of the food or the gifts or whatever than I need. I'm sitting here, praying for a new car or a new job or whatever, or wishing for, or if you believe in the law of attraction, attracting for, or whatever. And it's like all this stuff is kind of our narcissistic way of saying, well, life is about me. And victim mentality is the utmost pride. It's like wallowing in pity. These are all self-pride. Guilt, another self-pride thing. And when we look at it for what it is and we call it out and we say, look, there's 8 billion other people in life that are having things happen to them, right? It doesn't, like, your little thing might be big to you, but again, put it in the category. Can I change it? Can I not change it? Does that make sense, or am I rambling today?
Oh, you're totally rambling. I'm just kidding. No, that's great. You're very, very philosophical with your view, and I agree with pretty much everything you've said. It's um, I I think things do happen to us, but at the same time, much of what we do is we have some sort of a part in doing it. I mean, even if I don't know, your car gets broken into, you did park your car there, so there's your part in it. But all the way up to things like, well, my wife did leave me when I was drinking, and that was my part, and it was huge. I was drunk. I was married to the bottle more than I showed love to my wife, and I would have left me too. So
Mhm.
we do have a part in it, and now that I've been sober for a little while, I've learned that I'm not a victim. of what happened to me. I've learned that I had a part in almost everything bad that's happened to me. So, yeah.
Well, and I think it's important to differentiate there. I'm just going to bring this closer so you guys can see a little better. That way we got the matching sizes there. But it's interesting to me because we look at it, and a lot of people say, what is your part in this? And this is something that they talk about in a lot of recovery groups and things like that. And they talk about what is your part, okay? And to me, I'm like, okay, well, what's the deal here? You got some, kid who was abused or whatever. What's their part? How does that work, right? How do we look at that? Like, okay, for me, I was abused as a kid, and we look at it, and it's like, well, what was my part? Well, I could say, sometimes I was a little snarky or whatever, but no kid ever deserves beating. No spouse ever deserves ill treatment. No one ever deserves things like that. And the word deserves kind of an interesting word. Got to be careful with it. But we look at it, and it's like, okay, what was my part in it? Well, my part in it could simply be that I was there. And I look at it, and it's like, okay, if I separate my part in it, okay, not saying I have responsibility for childhood abuse or neglect or upbringing or anything.
No.
That'd be as silly as saying the guy starving in a different country has a part in it. Now, he does have a part in it, like he's a part of the play.
Right.
The play is going on, and he is part of it. He is part of the situation, the circumstance.
Yes.
And we got to really look at that because it's a careful line to draw when we look at someone who owns something as a victim, right? We look at things, and for me, I was a product of all those things, and I owned it. That was my story. I carried it around. It's like I had this backpack on, and I'm like, I was abused. I had this. And I'd tell you all about it, right? You'd sit there, and you'd be like, well, Marcus, tell me about yourself. And I was ready to tell whoever would listen. I mean, guy down the street, dude walking, anyone, right? And I would tell anyone, and it was like this bag or this badge of honor that was, I was abused. This is why I'm this way. This is why I'm this way. This is why I do this. This is why I'm flaky sometimes. This is why I'm this. This is why, right? And I had this bag or backpack that I wore around, which is my story of what happened to me. And I realized at one point that letting go of the story or not caring about the story didn't make it okay for whoever did whatever to me, right? So it's like, okay, if I let go of the story, I am now free. Okay, if I hold on to the story, nothing happens other than I feel like shit all the time, I drink, and I'm miserable. So we look at that and we're like, okay, we hold on to the story. Now letting go of it, a lot of people think that letting go of the story means somehow that the other person was in the right. Okay, but we have to look at it. And I really differentiated this because I had to sit down and say to myself, when dealing with abuse, instead of looking at it like, oh, I was abused, I was this, I was that. And it wasn't as bad as some people. I realize a lot of people have it a lot worse. But we look at it and we're like, okay, do I carry this around, and does it make it okay for him or the person who did it? Does it justify him? Right? And this was like a big fine line. And it was like, okay, well, if I remain a victim, then that means it's his fault. That means, somehow in my weird brain, that person is getting punished. All right? Does this make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. Yeah. I mean, it's the things happen to you, and you can't let it go in one sense, as far as you can't forget what happened, because it is what made you. Mm-hmm. And for me, that's the same thing. My past is what made me. So I try not to let it go. Mm-hmm. And the things that just happened to me, I try to accept them. And I'm at a point now where I have pretty much accepted what the bad things that have happened to me, and then the bad things that I've caused. And it's important to learn the difference. And as it relates to alcoholism, I have to realize that alcoholism, I had a part in the alcoholism as far as I started drinking. Did I have a part in the disease? Well, I don't think they have that answer as far as whether I was an alcoholic, born as an alcoholic, became one. But the fact is, once again, I just need to accept the fact that I'm an alcoholic and that it happened. I know a lot of people in that early sobriety, and they're mad. They're just angry that they're alcoholics, that they can't drink again. They can't go out with their friends. And when I'm talking to them, I try to help them work through that, as far as it's just the way it is. You need to let that go. You can't worry about that It is part of you, and it's something you just have to deal with and try to make it a positive thing.
Well, and that's the thing is you can look at the different sides of the coin for everything, and I can look at it as, oh gosh, I'm an alcoholic. What now? Another thing. Like when I was trying to come to grips with it, it's like, what else, right? Mental illness, insanity, mental hospital, alcohol. I mean, what else is going to happen to me? And we look at it, and it's like, okay, our stories, our life, everything that we have, it doesn't make us, but it has made up our mindset. Like I am not me because of what happened. My mindset is the way it is because of what happened. That's what molded and shaped it. But we have to look at it, and at some point we have to say, you know what? I'm done being a victim because there's other people that have the same thing happens that do different outcomes, and it's just because they look at it different. And we got a couple of questions coming in here. Lauren says, what do you do once you internalized your abuser and now do it yourself? Lauren, if you can specify what you mean by internalized your abuser, like became them. I'm not sure what you mean by that. If you can clarify it, I think I can treat that a little bit better. Peter says ego is a tough mother to break. It can be until you realize who's the one who has the ego. Right? Who am I egotistic about, and who is this ego that I talk about? Right? Who is it? It's self-preservation. That's what it is. It's self-preservation. There's a part of you that says, I need to survive. It's the old lizard brain, if you will. It's the old caveman type thing where it's like, okay, I need to survive. And, a walrus, well, I don't think a walrus, maybe a woolly mammoth, right? Walruses don't like come around and flop and kill people. But the woolly mammoth might get you in those days. And you have it and you're like, okay, this is going to get me. That person's going to get me. He's going to fight me for food. And you start to build these things and your ego is built. Your ego is self-preservation. Now, we don't have woolly mammoths and maybe those weird floating walruses we talked about earlier. But maybe now that we're in society, it's about society, right? Your protection instead of, hey, I got to watch out for the barbarian, I got to watch out for the mammoth, I got to watch out for the dinosaur, whatever it is. Now you're like, well, I need to get the top of the pack. I need to make a bunch of money. I need to be socially acceptable. I need to be looked up to from my peers. I need this. This is all ego stuff, right? But when you realize this baseline point of, look, there's 8 billion people, or 7.5 with a bunch of numbers after it, billion people on this planet. You're just one. That's it, right? When you look at that, you kind of zoom out. And I wrote about this in the book that I'm coming out with the Sober Letters. And we wrote about that where we talk about, hey, you're on this boat. And you're on this boat and you're looking at things and you're going up and down and you're going up and down and you're falling over and things are crashing and there's a storm going on, right? But what happens is when you pan out, you realize that you're just like on these little waves on this big earth that's in this big solar system and you're pretty minuscule and pretty non-significant, right? And we look at that and it's like, okay, well, that kind of puts the ego in check, right? You're here. And the way I look at it is I'm no more important than anyone else. Right? I'm no more important than Terry. I'm no more important than a guy who doesn't even know what a YouTube channel is. I'm no more important than the guy that can't get sober. Right? There's no difference. The only difference is there's some knowledge that I got that helped me through things and a life philosophy I developed that helps me through things. Okay? And we look at that and we're like, okay, when we have that, because victimhood is ego. It's ego. It's self-preservation. I'm going to protect myself with these stories so that I have this shell around me and I block the world out and everything happens to me and everything's bad because I want to protect me.
Yeah.
When you get that, you come to grips and you say, well, can I love myself for protecting myself back then through the hard times? Because that's what I did, right? You're like an armadillo and you're like, I put this shell on me, and we have little armadillos in our yard sometimes, but they put the shell on them and they're like, I'm going to protect myself from the outside world. And in that, you became a victim to protect yourself because that's what you knew how to do. And you got to look at it and say, well, little old Marcus did a good job of that when he was a kid. Okay? Now, Marcus is an adult. He doesn't need it anymore. Right? You don't need that anymore. I can protect myself in different ways, or I can just learn to be and learn to live and accept things as the way they are. And I really looked at it because when dealing with abuse, it's kind of an interesting thing because you have the victim mentality and everything. But it's not about you. that's the most beautiful, freeing thing, is it's not about you. If there was another person in that person's life, the same damn thing would have happened. Why? Because it's about that person, not about you. And when you look at owning your part in it, it's like, okay, I own my part in it in the fact that I was there. And now
Right.
I'm owning my part in it in moving on and saying, well, thanks, hey, you protected me during that. Now we don't need that. Does that make sense to everyone, Terry?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. And ego is it's huge, and it works. It works in both directions. As far as I can have a big ego that I'm the best person at I don't know. I'm cycling. I bicycle a lot, and I'm not. Or I can have this big ego that I think I don't have a big ego, so I have this ego because I don't have an ego. I think I'm just the
I'm the
best.
humblest man in the room.
The humblest man in the room. That's a huge ego
Yeah.
right there. So it works in many different directions, but that shell around that's what the ego is. It's blocking people out. And we have to try to smash it in sobriety so that we don't make those big mental blocks against getting outside help, listening to other people, trying to help us get sober.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
it's really cool. I like understanding. There was a guy who I listened to when I first started getting sober, but I didn't get it until I got sober. And he had these tapes, and I remember his whole thing was like, so what? So what? And he doesn't mean it in a way like, piss off. He meant it in a way like, so what? Okay. All these things happen to me, and
yeah.
okay, like you can own them, or you can move on. Let's take a look at Lauren. Put her question in a different light. Let's see. She says, like, I had someone told me how crap I was for many years, and I got away from them, but now I tell myself how crap I am now. Well, we got to look at that and say, well, you're a human being. I don't think any human being's crap. I mean, there's people out there who hurt others, and I heard during my time when I was trying to get sober and I was a victim, someone who was an intern at my office was like, hurt people hurt people. And I was like, what? Wait a minute. Hurt people hurt people. Those who have been hurt have a tendency to hurt others. And we look at it, and I say, okay, well, we look at that. And for Lauren, hurt people hurt themselves sometimes through negative thinking or whatever it is. And, of course, if you're having really bad, hurtful thoughts, go get help. Call the hotlines and things like that. If you just Google whatever your issue is, you could find hotlines and things like that. But look at it as, you don't have to hurt yourself anymore. Me and Terry give you permission to not have to hurt yourself emotionally or verbally in your head anymore.
That's
You don't
right.
have to do it. There you go. And you don't even need our permission because we don't even matter. And that voice in your head doesn't even matter, right? Who is it talking? What happens is we have these thought lives, and there's a beautiful book. I don't know if it's in here. I think it's inside. It's called The Imp of the Mind. It's like one of those books. I think he sold like 900 copies or something, but it should sell way more. And he talks about OCD and obsessive thinking and everything like that. And he talks about how in our culture we take our thoughts seriously. And I remember when I used to go to church and I was Mr. Church Boy, I would go through and I was like, okay, well, there's that verse, take every thought captive. And I'm like, okay, we're in this wrestle with thoughts. And it's like, no, you're not. You are not in a wrestle with your thoughts. And I'll prove it to you. Don't think about a pink elephant. Don't do it. Try really hard not to think about a pink elephant. I'll bet you right now you just thought about a pink elephant, right? That's pretty much how it works. And we look at that, and I was able to control your thought for a minute, for a second, whatever it is.
That's right.
Okay, and we look at that for a minute.
You made me think that pink elephant before too.
Yeah, there you go, right? And we look at that, and we're like, okay, if thought can be controlled by something that silly, or TV, or culture, or what you see, what I look at is you're sitting there. So Lauren's sitting there, and she's got all these thoughts. Okay, she's been in an abusive past, right? It's like when you go to buy a car, right? You say, I'm going to get a red whatever car. And then that day, you're like, holy shit, I think the Ford dealer sold 9 million red cars because that's all I see everywhere. Now, did the amount of red cars increase, or did your awareness of them increase? Think about that. All right, so Lauren's sitting here, and she's got all these thoughts, and it's like, okay, thought about this. I got to go to work. I need some coffee. I got to quit drinking, whatever, all these thoughts. Okay, because she's been predisposed to abuse, she's naturally picking those up. And on top of it, she's also heard those a bunch of times, right? So if I come up to you and all I say, right, let's say I'm like a crazy person. I'm like, hey, Terry, pink elephant. Terry, pink elephant. You know, Terry, the other day we were sitting around and pink elephant. Pretty soon, I'll bet you if you listen to like 3 days of that, you're going to be like, Marcus, I was like mowing the lawn and I thought about the damn, and then I was doing this other thing and I thought about the damn elephant. So what's happening is you're just becoming attuned to these thoughts that are going on. So it's not I have these thoughts. These thoughts are. I'm choosing to dwell on whatever's there.
Right.
And this is interesting, and it's something that really came to grips with me. Your thoughts are not your own because you didn't even make up the English language. Think about that for a minute. Right? This always puzzled me when I was a kid because I had friends that were bilingual, and I'm like, what language do you think in? And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, what language do you think in? Are you sitting there like, como estas? Or are you like, this or whatever? And you look at that, and it's like, okay, well, I don't control these things. They just happen. And I can roll with it. And that can be the most liberating thing. So, Lauren, I hope that helped. I hope it answered that. But yeah, that's kind of the deal there. And if you have more questions, let me know. The questions are over here. I know someone last time was like, Marcus, your eyes are shifty and you look around a lot. I got Terry here. I got another Terry here. I got Skype over here, which has the big Terry. I got questions over here, and I got to try to remember to look at you guys right here in the camera. So I do try the best. Okay. Kira says, all that you're saying is very true and applicable to people who have divorced from non-drinking, verbally abusive, narcissistic partners. Yes. Very much so. And people who are still in the relationships. Okay, here's the thing we got to learn. First and foremost is your physical safety. First and foremost. If you're worried about your physical safety because of yourself or because of someone else, get out of the situation, go get help. Now,
Absolutely.
Go do it. Okay? There's no need to be worrying about that stuff. Go get the help. There's ways to get help. There's things to do. Search for it. Okay? Secondly, when you're in this stuff, you could choose not to take it anymore. You could choose not to internalize it, right? So the person earlier who was talking about internalizing things, it's like, well, it doesn't mean it. Just because someone says it doesn't make it so. A lot of people say a lot of things about me, right? If you ever get a social media channel and you get people watching it, you'll notice that people say some pretty darn hurtful things. I can internalize it. And for a minute, I want to. My brain wants to go and be like, well, you know what? I want to prove myself right, or I want to talk about how much of a jerk that guy is, or I want to do whatever. And I have to pause and say, well, what does it matter in the grand scheme of the universe? What does it matter? Some guy on Facebook, some guy on YouTube said that he thinks I'm an ass because I make these videos. So what?
Yeah.
So what?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. What if one person gets helped? What if no one gets helped? Doesn't matter, right? Hopefully I do more harm than good. That's kind of the goal here. But in the grand scheme of things, we have to look at it and really get to the point of you are insignificant like the other 8 billion people on the earth.
And there's a couple of things that I do to help with when people are verbally abusing me or bad-mouthing me, that sort of thing. One takes me back a while back, actually a couple of decades, before alcohol actually became a serious problem. You know, I was still a fairly heavy drinker, but this was back when I had control of my life. And I was an up-and-coming chef at a restaurant, and I remember that there was a promotion coming up, and it was between me and this other guy. And we were both hard workers, and we were both considered, and they just said they were going to look at us and for the next month or so and decide who was going to get the promotion. And I remember hearing through the grapevine that he was bad mouthing me. He said Terry couldn't boil water if his life depended on it. He said things like that. And he was bad mouthing me, and I wanted so bad to start bad mouthing him. But at that point, I didn't. What I did was I just worked. I worked hard. I worked harder, and I just kept my straight path that I was on, and I got the promotion. And that's one of the things, and I do that in sobriety today. As far as I try not to let people's bad mouthing me affect me. Of course, I want to internalize it, just as you said, Marcus. But I try not to, and I just try to focus on work, trying to do a good job, trying to live within my principles for my life. And the other thing I do is every day I think about what I'm grateful for, but on top of that, just kind of looking back and think about what did I do that was good today. What kind of good things did I accomplish? Did I just sit on the couch all day and watch TV? No, I did some good things, and maybe I helped somebody here and there, and it really helps me with my internal feelings about if somebody is trying to badmouth me or abuse me and things like that. I have a person that's real close to me in my life that this person was abused for 4 years, and it's taken a long time to get over it. I mean, it's a difficult thing to work through, and it's a daily thing that one has to deal with. But just working on getting some tools will definitely help.
Yeah. And I look at it too, like, sometimes we have this stuff and we have to pause and just look at things for what they are. And we have to realize, hey, look, you know what? Obviously my mind's going to be that way. Obviously I'm going to think that way. Like, for those of you who are like, hey, I feel like, my mind's not working right. Well, yeah, lots of alcohol does that to you. It's pretty simple. No sleep does that to you. And we look at it, and it's interesting because I'm a big believer that if I was raised like you, if I was brought up with your thought capacity, I would be you. Like anyone on this call, you take them, you swap lives, right? And you're like, okay, well now we have Marcus. If Marcus was born into whoever's life it was, I would be you right now. Because you are the sum of, you made all the choices based on the information you had at hand. And if you were to take me, let's say you take Marcus and you're like, Marcus is sober and he does these talks and this stuff, right? If you were to take me and put me in like a concentration camp or a mind control thing, within 30 days you wouldn't even recognize me. I wouldn't even recognize myself. Plain and simple, right? So we look at that and we're like, well, I guess I'm the way I am because of what happened, and now I can be free to be whatever else I want to be. And I don't need to take that, right? It'd be like me taking that and being like, man, well, that month where I was, in that job that really messed me up, I can take it and I can own it, or I could say, whew, good thing that chapter's over, let's move on. I hope that helps. Didn't make sense in my mind, but, pink elephants don't either, so. So, yeah. Okay, Peter says, Marcus, I think Jesus has led me to you. Oh, maybe, I don't know. Maybe not. Who knows? We're just here. That's it, we're just here. Do you think God can help us? It depends on what you think, right? If you let God, whoever that is, help you, then yeah, it can. You can also learn ways of helping yourself. You can pretty much do whatever. You got anything to chime in on that? I think God has helped us. That's my answer.
Absolutely. And God is gonna, if just as you said, if you let God help you, then you're gonna get helped. It's just trying to go along that the correct path, trying to make those right decisions. If you believe in a God, then let God help you make those decisions. Deep down, you're gonna know what decision that you should be making as far as recovering from alcohol and even going through life.
Well, and here's another interesting thing too. Having grown up in the church, and I used to be a street preacher years ago, um, I started to realize that religion, in and of itself, can be a self-pride kind of thing. Right?
Absolutely.
It's like, okay, I can be prideful that I know about God or I think I know this stuff, but I always look at it this way because I used to have everything figured out. Now I'm lucky if I like have one thing figured out each day. But I used to have everything figured out. I knew who God was. I knew this. I knew that. I knew what the Bible said. Everything like that. And it's interesting because the minute you know who God is the minute you've become Him. Now, think about that for a minute. The minute you know exactly who God is the minute you've become Him, because now you are saying what He is, what He can, what He can't do, what He thinks, what this, and we simply don't know. We have no idea.
Yep.
I remember in rehab, James used to walk around, and you'll remember this, Terry, and he'd be like, I don't know if there's a God, but I know there's a devil. And I'd take that a
Yeah.
step further and say, I don't know if there's a God, but I know for certain I am not him or her. Right?
Absolutely.
I know for certain I'm not. Right? And we look at that and we're like, a higher power. What's the point of a higher power? The point of the higher power is to realize that you're not the higher power.
Right.
Right? Because you've been living your life saying, I'm this victim, I'm this, I have that, I have this, my story, I was, I am, whatever. And you look at it and it's like, well, who is the I am I speak of?
Yeah.
It's nothing but energy in a bag of skin that goes around and talks puffed up. If you're anything like me, I was puffed up. And we look at it and it's like, what if I could just come down to center and be like, you know what? I'm no different from Jay. I'm no different from Kira, Edgar, Peter, Lauren, Terry. No different. Right? You can say, well, I read the Bible 14 times. God's going to be like, your chair's a little bit higher than Marcus. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. What matters is releasing and just saying, hey, I am part of all. I'm part of all. Part of everything. We don't know what's out there. But we do know that we're not in control of everything. You might think you're in control of your little isolated bubble. And this is interesting. I watch this, and it's interesting to have kids because I watch kids, and I send them to school, which is like this totally controlled social environment thing, and it's a private school, so it's even more controlled, and it's in like conservative Central Florida, which is even more controlled. And I watch how they react, and I watch how things work, and I can only laugh because I'm the same way. Right? I look at this and I get my little group and I'm like, okay, well, who's the top in the group? Okay, I got to do better than that. Who's this guy? I got to do this. You know, what's this guy doing? I got to do better. If the group feels this way, I start to feel this way. And you forget that you're in a bubble. It's like trying to go to a fish and describe what water is. Or you go to a fish and you're like, hey, you ever heard of water? He's like, and you're like, you know, the water. And he's like, what the hell are you talking about? Right? What are you talking about? I don't know what water is. And it's like that with society and our life and our circles that we're in, whether it's online, whether it's offline, whatever it is, right? You look at it and I say, hey, check this out. You're not all there is. And you're like, well, Marcus, you know, the pastor said, and these 15 people in church agree with him. And it's like, well, that's controlled. Those 15 people agree with him because he's standing up there saying it. And life is made up of agreements, what you agree to and what you don't agree to. And what everyone agreed. I agree that Jeff Bezos is a great businessman. Okay, maybe right place, right time. Maybe not. Happens to be the richest guy on the planet. But again, who cares? He's got dollar bills. Big deal. Right? We have a couple too. That's all good. That's all fine. But we look at it and our society is controlled by this stuff. And it's easy to be a victim of that. Well, you know, if the government taxed Jeff Bezos more, I think that's the only thing I agree with Trump on, that businesses should be taxed more, which isn't what he said in his campaign. But anyway, this isn't a political discussion. But we look at that.
No,
and
you just started it.
What's that?
You just started it.
I did just start it. It just came out. That's the only thing I agree with on him. But we look at that and we're like, okay, well, you know, that should be, this should be, that should be, this should be. And the reason these things are is because we all agree on them, right? This guy is smart because we agree on him. This God is this way because we all agree it is. And we look at it, and really the key to the victim mindset is to forget about you. Okay, and I know there's a lot of people in alcohol who say, oh, you need to take care of yourself. You've been taking care of yourself quite some time. You just haven't been doing it really well. So it's time to say, I am part of everything. It doesn't matter. What is. What happens is what is. That's where we have to work with. What we do is we start to look at things as good or bad. It's like the old story, and I'm going to totally hack up the story. But it's the story of this farmer dude, and he's got like a horse and kids and stuff, and he's got his farm, and he's like, oh, man, hey, how you doing? And one day, one of his horses runs away. And he's like, oh, my horse ran away. And his neighbors come over, and they're like, dude, your horse ran away. That's terrible. How are you going to get to wherever you need to get to on this farmland? And he's like, well, I don't know. Horse ran away. Who knows? Next day, the horse comes back, and he comes with a wild horse. And his neighbors come over. They're like, dude, that is so great. You got 2 horses. Now you didn't have to pay for it because it's wild. It's awesome. Like, well, I don't know. Maybe it's good. Maybe it's bad. Next day, the son's riding the horse with him, and it's because the horse is wild. He's like, and he falls off and breaks his leg. And the neighbors come over. They're like, man, that horse was a curse. Your family's cursed because of the horse. He broke his leg. Terrible. It's like, I don't know. I don't know. He's laying over there. It hurts, but I don't know. I don't know if it's good or bad. Next day, the military comes in, and they're like, every young man needs to come to war. Where's your son? Well, he's got a broken leg. Okay, he doesn't have to go to war. And they all know everyone's going to die in the war. Hey, this is great. He doesn't have to go to war. And the moral of the story is we don't know whether things are going to be good or bad. We just have to accept what is. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if it's good or bad. I don't know what's going to happen. And to me, the freedom is in saying things are just going to happen. I don't know. The minute I say, well, this happened to me because I'm Marcus, that's the minute we get in trouble because that's our ego talking. Does that make sense? Does that help? Or am I crazy? Or a little
Oh, that makes total sense. I love that story. That's a good story. And as far as the victim of alcohol, what I've learned for me is that I've learned that I have to not be a victim. I have to move forward. As far as God goes, my beliefs and your beliefs, they don't matter. For me, it's a matter of doing the right thing. I have found through my own experience that when I do the right thing and I live a life of helping others and being positive, my life goes better. So that's my experience. Is that going to happen in the future all the time? Well, kind of like your story. I don't know. I don't know if that's the way it will go, but for me, life certainly is a lot better now that I'm sober and I'm able to make these correct decisions. Where when I was drinking, I would always, not always, but most of the time, choose the wrong thing to do, like get another bottle and maybe get behind the wheel of a car or something like that. It's just, this is what I found. Just living a positive, helpful life, it helps.
Yeah. It's interesting, too, because we look at that, and it's like there's a paradox of life where someone could look at you and be like, well, I want that. I want that life. I want to care. I want to do good things. I want to feel good. I want to stop drinking. And it's almost like you can't have it because of the fact that you want it, if that makes any sense. Right? It's like I go through and I'm like, I want to be a humble person. Let's say that. You can't get humility by wanting it because it goes against the very basics of humility.
Absolutely.
Right? Does that make sense? And so it's like,
I'm the most humble person in the world.
Yeah. And we're like, okay, same kind of thing with life. I want to do this so that I can get that. Right? Like in business, I want to do this so I can get money. And sometimes that works in business. But in life, oftentimes it doesn't. And it's like, you look at it and the people looking for the better life are almost the people who never find it. It's almost the people who stumble upon it, who have an experience of, wow, it doesn't matter. Now I'm free. Right? And what I want to offer you guys today is freedom from the mentality of victim mentality. And we look at it and it's like, you could be free right now. You could be free right now by letting the chains go of all the notions, all the beliefs, all the thoughts, all the words that you put to stuff. I remember when I was trying to get sober, it was the hardest thing to admit I was an alcoholic. Yeah. Why? So I can't have alcohol. So
Right.
a substance that is literally poison, but it sells a lot, so we don't call it that, um, messes up my mind. So, but no, you don't understand. Like, I can't stop drinking. So, oh,
Right.
well, I guess if it doesn't matter, I just stop drinking then. Doesn't matter, right? A lot of people are, oh, I'm an alcoholic. I will probably relapse. I don't know. Maybe not. Some people go years without relapsing.
Yeah.
Some people never relapse. Some people relapse all the time. What
Yeah.
is. Where you're at now is where you're at now. What are
That's
you
right.
going to do? And we look at that, and you can be a victim. Oh, God, I'm an alcoholic. I got to go to these things. I got to do this stuff. Or you could be like, I'm an alcoholic, and
And it's
I'm not going
what
to drink
I
anymore.
do.
Yeah,
that's
that's what you do.
that's what I do. I just I don't worry about that I'm an alcoholic. I'm, it happened. I have to do what I have to do for my sobriety. That's it, and that's what I do. It's not whether I want to or not. I just do it.
Well, and did the bell ring? Like, I remember when I was getting sober, I thought there was going to be this buzzer, confetti, and all these people were going to come around and be like, look at the alcoholic. Never
Right?
happened, right? Did the bell ever ring for you? It never rang for me.
No,
Yeah.
no. And it's kind of funny. You kind of expect I'm sober now. I'm this
Mhm.
great person, and no, in reality, is I'm sober now, and I'm back up to where most people in the world are. I was way below them in my functionality and everything, and now I'm just back to normal. So why would anybody celebrate that?
Yeah. That's interesting, too, because I remember when I was an alcoholic, everything was profound. Like, my utterances should have been sold as they rolled off my lips. And I was like, that is so profound. And then I read it the next day and I was like, what a dumbass. But, I thought I was profound. And that's kind of how it is we have this delusional thinking that we're so important and our words are so important. And being an alcoholic is going to be this status and stigma. And it's like, so?
Yeah,
And luckily in our culture today, it's like more people are happy that I'm sober than are not. I'm
of
actually a
course.
lot of people are like, "Hey, dude, that's cool," And it's like last week when I went to the thing, she's like, "Here's your tonic water. That's cool. I'm not even charge you for them." And people aren't like, "Oh, you're just having tonic water. What a wimp." Some people might be that way, but those people, whatever, they can have their own opinion. Let's take a couple questions before we head off for the day. I'm struggling to quit. I drink once in a while from drinking every day. I'm just 23. How do I stay away from it? Well, get a different mindset. Do something instead of drinking and get help, right? If you have to go to a group, if you have to go to a treatment, if you're detoxing, you should always go to the doctor. But get some help. Watch these videos. Do something good every day to replace what it is. Start to feel good about yourself without alcohol. Because you can. The best way to feel good about yourself is to go do something for someone else. Right? And don't do it just to feel good. Just do it because you're going to do it. And then the feeling will come, which is kind of cool. It's like getting it in motion. Sechin says, I do awful things when I'm drunk, and it's kind of automatic, and I'm compelled to do stupid things. If you don't want to do stupid things, then
Yep.
stop drinking the stuff that makes you do stupid things. I did stupid things too. But
Yeah.
the internet's full of stupid things when people are drinking. You're not alone, right? That's the thing. So, and
That's right, Sachin. You're preaching to the choir. I was right
yeah,
there, and many of the alcoholics I know, yep, absolutely, they do
yeah,
stupid things when they're drinking.
totally. Yeah. I mean, I'm glad I never got in any fights because I was always the one who made everyone laugh. But just stupid. I mean, But again, and you're not special. Everyone's here dealing with similar or different stuff. And what are you going to do? You don't want to do stupid stuff? Change. Make a change.
Right.
Peter says, would you agree that we are all the sum of our thought processes which have evolved and modeled over time? No. I agree that I am not the sum of my thoughts. Right? I used to think this. I used to think that If I think bad things, I'm therefore a bad person. Everyone thinks bad things once in a while. Doesn't mean they're bad. It just means they pick those thoughts up. Just like those red cars we talked about earlier, right? Picked them up, got those thoughts. So no, I don't believe that. Also, believing that you're the sum of your thoughts and everything is also a victim mentality.
Yes.
It's like, oh, I'm the sum of my thoughts. I got these thoughts. You don't have any thoughts. There are thoughts. They're out there. You don't have them, right? We have the same ones. What does that mean? We got to fight over them? Like, oh, I got to have this thought now. You got to have it. No, we're not sitting there doing that. There are thoughts. You don't have thoughts. Interesting. Think about that. Okay, Kara says, brilliant. No more victim, going to keep practicing this. Exactly.
Right on.
There you go. Awesome. Jay the Conqueror. Good name. I believe alcohol is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde syndrome. It can be.
Yeah.
I believe alcohol is like the worst mental health thing on the world because it just warps your mental health, right? It's like, look at this. These guys here complaining about doing stupid things that he doesn't really want to do, but he does them anyway when he drinks.
Absolutely. But for me, I did not have the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde to the extent that you may think so. For me, drinking, I mean, as you can see, I'm kind of a mellow guy, if you hadn't noticed. But alcohol just made me more mellow. I mean, that's really it. I didn't become an angry drunk or anything like that. I was still I was a fun-loving guy, I guess. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Still are.
There you go.
The alcohol.
That's
I
right.
thought that too. I thought I wasn't going to be funny anymore, and then I was like, well, hey, everyone's laughing. I must still be funny.
Yeah.
So
Probably
yeah, we just
funnier.
look at that. What's that?
Probably funnier.
Yeah, I might be. Yeah. I laugh at myself a lot less, but please, some mindset keys. All right, mindset keys. Here we go. The best mindset key I can give you is pay no attention to your mind. It's going to say what it does. And I talk to my kids about this. It's interesting because talk about the working of the mind and the content of the mind. Right now you have content of mind, right? You're dwelling on the content, what your mind is thinking about. I'm bad. I'm terrible. I deserve abuse. I am this. I am that. I can't stop drinking. I'm a victim. Blah, 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 blah. All day, all night. It's no wonder you think the way you do. No wonder I think the way I do. No wonder Terry thinks the way he does. All these thoughts going on. Now you have the working of the mind. The working of the mind is the way that your mind works. Like if I have caffeine, this is decaf coffee. If I have caffeine, my mind goes really fast. Really fast. Like I can't even listen to it. It's just so fast. And then when you add the content, now it's like the working of my mind has changed. And now it's like rapid fire. You suck. You're terrible. You're not going to make anything. You're going to do this. You'll probably relapse. You're terrible. No one's watching this show. No one cares. So when you add the content to the working, but the problem is everyone thinks it's about the content. Well, I got to deal with my self-esteem issues. I got to deal with this. I got to deal. No, it's the working. Deal with the working of the mind. Start to realize that your mind works the way that your mind works. And that just is. And if I sit here and I get those thoughts, instead of saying, oh man, gonna beat that thought up, I just go, Marcus's brain just working. That's the way it works. He probably had too much coffee, maybe a soda, maybe he smokes too many damn cigars. Whatever it is, that's the way the working of the mind works. So remember that. Because when the content comes in, it's going to try to persuade you. It's going to try to change you, right? And I look at this. I have high school age kids, and you watch them when they start dating and things, and their mind is like totally changes when they're in the presence of the person. Totally changes, right? The working of the mind totally changes, and they're totally encapsulated in this stuff. And that's what happens, right? Your little thoughts, the content of your mind is like a wooing, loving person. And he wants to wisp you away and make you think about them. But the fact of the matter is you take the person out of the picture and it doesn't even matter. Take the content out of the picture, it doesn't even matter. Right? But in that minute, you're like, oh, you are my everything, my thought, everything. But it doesn't matter. That's just content. Content's going to go all day long, all day, every day. And again, it's not even your content. It's someone else's language. So I hope that made sense. Is that a good tip for you guys? That's a mindset tip that has helped me immensely. Just life-changing is realizing the content's just going to... But the working,
Right, just accept it. Accept the fact that these thoughts are going to happen.
Yeah.
Then my I make my priority as for getting sober, being sober. That's my priority throughout my day. Everything I do, I have to. Well, I don't have to think about it constantly through the day, but as an alcoholic, I do need to make sobriety a priority. So
Yeah.
that's the direction I try to steer myself.
Yeah. And the thoughts aren't just yours.
Right.
Terry has the same thoughts I do. Mine are probably a little weird, like they involve pink elephants and walruses flopping around and stuff like that. But, but it's not specific to you. Okay, so let's see here. People take me more seriously now that I stopped drinking. Not that they didn't before, but more of a respect thing, having a sound mind. Yeah, people are going to respect it. Be like, hey, that
Yep.
dude knows what he's talking about. Or
That's
maybe he
right.
doesn't, but he says it well and he doesn't slur it. Um, so yeah, that's kind of the deal. So I think we are about time for today, unless there's any like last minute pressing, hey, help me with this or questions or whatever. Put those in the box and we'll try our best to give you more crazy thoughts. So put those in. We'll wait like 3 or 4 minutes for some other questions. And if there's any last minute stuff you want to share, Terry, feel free. Any last minute, like, hey, this will help kind of stuff.
Well, I think just remembering that, yeah, we as an alcoholic, we may feel and we are a victim of alcoholism, but it's something that we have control to get over. There's many diseases that people don't have control whether they can get over it or get better or not. Alcoholism, we can. All we have to do is stop drinking. I mean, it's really that simple as just don't drink, no matter what. No matter what has happened in my past or your past, it having a drink isn't going to help it. It may mask your symptoms for a short time, but things will eventually get worse. And so we're not a victim.
Yeah, and you're not even a good victim. There's a lot of way worse victims than you. Like there's people from like the 1400s who were in terrible stuff. So you're not even a good victim. You suck at it, so you should stop, right? And don't look at that as another way to be like, oh, I suck at being a victim. Just look at it as freedom. You don't have to be a victim. This doesn't have to be on your back anymore. You don't have to drink anymore, right? All you have to do is just be and live and learn new ways of coping and learn to train your brain. And over time, your brain will start to change, right? Like if you're in a circle of group, like when I went to the church, I was in the church for about 4 years. I read the Bible all the time, thought I knew what it said, thought I knew what it understood, but that's a big, complicated book. And I thought about it all the time. I remember when I first started doing that stuff, I was like, wow, I think about God all the time now. Go me, right? And it was like, well, of course you're thinking about it because you're hearing about it all the time. Right? Of course you're going to think about these things because you hear about them all the time. Of course you're going to have these thoughts because you're around them. And if you start to move away and start to learn new ways of thinking, or just simply say, hey, I don't think about that anymore. I'm going to go over here and think about this. That seems to help as well. For someone who says he has a problem with overthinking, well, stop overthinking. You don't have to think about things you don't want to. Right? No one's there like controlling it. You just, okay, well, there it is. All right, well, let it pass. And just to prove it to you, has there ever been a time in your life when you overthought something and then you stopped? Right? Like you were overthinking something. Maybe, I remember I heard a tape years ago from this alcoholic guy. And he's like, we're the kind of people who got to go there. And the boss says, I need to talk to you. And we got to go sit down in the bathroom for an hour and a half thinking about what the boss is going to talk to us about. And then we go to the boss and he talks to us for 2 minutes. Then we got to go back and sit down and talk to ourselves about what he just talked about. And it's like, that's kind of how we are, right? We overthink. But there's a time in your life when you overthought something and then later you didn't. So that's proof that it does end. That's proof that it can go away. It's just you need to decide when you're going to have it go away. And you can do it by simply saying, I don't think about that anymore.
Yep.
So I hope that helps. All right, cool. Thanks for joining us. If you're joining, check out talksober.com. I have a book coming out shortly. I'm hoping to finish it. I'm like 2/3 the way done. We will have that for you. We're also coming out with a membership area where we're going to have private calls where we can have people on live and talk about their issues and things like that. a couple times a week. If you guys are interested in that, that will also be over at talksober.com. We'll have a link where you can join that stuff. It'll be like a small monthly fee just to chip in and help out and, get all the stuff that we need to get. And it'll be really beneficial for you as well. So, talksober.com, and have a good day. You don't have to think about this. You don't have to be a victim, and you certainly don't have to drink. Thanks for joining me and Terry, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everybody.
And I gotta find the button. The button is always hiding from me.